You've found nightfall murmurs. When day fades into silence, the world begins to whisper. Some stories come as murmurs, some as warnings, but they all come at night. Don't be afraid to listen, but never listen alone. The hinge on the great barn door issued its nightly complaint, a groan swallowed by the vast, breathless dark, a sound woven into the fabric of my 73 years, yet tonight it snagged sharp as a thorn. Unease prickled the nape of my neck. On this land, furrowed by 4 generations of thorns, instinct was a farmer's truest compass. Droughts had parched it, floods had drowned it, but the peculiar dread settling with the October moonlessness was a stranger. I am Elias Thorne, and this soil knows my bones. The day had unfolded with its usual rhythm, tending the whispering corn, ministering to the livestock, the slow settling into evening beside my faithful Silas. But midnight shattered the quiet. Not the familiar sighs and settling groans of an old homestead buffeted by wind. No. These were intrusions, sharp, rhythmic, imbued with a disturbing deliberation, emanating from the barn's shadowed heart. I levered myself upright in bed, joints grinding a protest. Silas, head lifted, ears straining towards the disturbance, confirmed it wasn't merely the imaginings of encroaching age. "What's the verdict, old fellow?" I rasped, fumbling for my spectacles. A thump of his tail against the worn floorboards was his assent. At least the darkness wouldn't be faced entirely alone. Boot leather scraped against the floor as I pulled them on, the familiar heft of the flashlight from the nightstand, a cold comfort in my palm, a flimsy shield against... what? Descending the stairs, Silas a silent shadow at my heels. The sounds intensified. A harsh metallic shriek, metal striking metal, followed by a dull, heavy impact that jolted the very air. My hand hesitated on the back door latch. Retreat beckoned, the siren call of blankets pulled high against phantom threats. But this earth was mine. Its burdens were mine. The night air, crisp and cold, bit at my exposed skin as I stepped out. Clouds had smothered the moon, plunging the farmstead into an inky void. My flashlight carved a hesitant tunnel through the oppressive blackness, guiding my steps towards the looming silhouette of the barn. Silas emitted a low growl, the fur along his spine ridged. "Steady now," I murmured. The words meant more for my own thundering heart. As we drew closer, the noises ceased abruptly. The ensuing silence pulsed, heavy with anticipation, as if the night itself held its breath. My hand, betraying a slight tremor, reached for the massive wooden door. A deep inhalation, then I pulled. The familiar perfume of hay, earth, and animal musk washed over me, yet tainted by an alien undertone, something discordant. I swept the beam across the cavernous interior, stalls standing sentinel, tools hanging in their accustomed places. Order reigned superficially. And yet, my gaze fixed on the old tractor. It sat askew, wrenched from its resting place near the far wall. Tools lay scattered around its base like fallen soldiers, their metallic surfaces catching brief cold glints from my light. "Is someone here?" My voice, thin and uncertain, seemed absorbed by the immensity of the space. "Hello?" Silence answered, but then a faint rustling, almost imperceptible, from the barn's deeper recesses. Silas whined, pressing his body hard against my leg. I rested a hand on his sturdy head, seeking solace as much as offering it. Advancing cautiously, the flashlight beam jittering across rough-hewn timbers, I saw them. Footprints, not the worn pattern of my own boots. These were larger, deeper, etched by an unfamiliar tread. They tracked towards the stacked fortress of hay bales at the very back. My mouth went dry. An intruder. Here. Perhaps still here. Prudence screamed retreat, demanded a call to the sheriff. But a stubborn curiosity, perhaps the ingrained tenacity of a man bound to his land, urged me onward. Following the tracks, the frantic drumming in my chest, a betraying rhythm, Silas remained a steadfast, warm presence beside me. Near the hay, I heard it, the soft, rhythmic cadence of breathing. Someone huddled in the shadows behind the bales. I halted, pinning the spot with the light. "I know you're there," I managed, striving for a firmness I didn't feel. "Show yourself. We can sort this out." A tense moment stretched. Then, slowly, hesitantly, a figure unfolded from the darkness. The beam caught a young man, scarcely more than a boy, his clothes torn, his face etched with grime and exhaustion. He blinked against the sudden glare, raising a hand defensively. "Please," his voice was a parched whisper. "Didn't touch nothing, just needed somewhere out of the cold." I lowered the beam slightly, assessing him. Thin, almost gaunt, with eyes that held the haunted look of someone who'd seen too much hardship. "What do they call you, son?" My fear began to yield, eroded by a rising tide of simple concern. "Leo," he answered, muscles still coiled, poised for flight. I nodded slowly, memories stirring. Years ago, others had sought refuge here. Hard times bred desperate measures. "Are you hungry, Leo?" He hesitated, then gave a minute, almost invisible nod. A sigh escaped me, heavy with the weight of my years. "All right, come up to the house. We'll find you some food. You can tell me how you came to be here." Leo's eyes widened, disbelief warring with suspicion. "You're not the law?" "Not yet," I replied evenly. "Unless you give me cause. Now let's move. Too cold for debating out here." As we walked towards the glow of the house, Silas trotting purposefully ahead, the absurdity of my earlier terror struck me. The sinister potential of the night seemed to dissolve. But then, stepping into the revealing circle of light cast by the porch lamp, I saw it. A dark marking peeking from beneath the frayed cuff of his sleeve. A symbol I'd seen pictured in reports, linked to a rash of thefts across the county. Our eyes met. In that instant, I saw his recognition of my discovery. The air crackled, thick with unspoken tension. A choice presented itself, stark and immediate. This boy was entangled in trouble, undeniably, yet he was also just that, a boy, famished and frightened. "Let's get that food inside you," I said finally, pushing the door open. "After that, you and I are going to have a serious discussion about choices." Leo paused on the threshold, relief and apprehension flickering across his young face, before nodding and stepping inside. The night, I knew, was far from concluded. Difficult words lay ahead, perhaps culminating in that call I'd initially dismissed. But for this moment, there was the promise of warmth, sustenance, and maybe, just maybe, a chance to listen. A gust rattled the barn door again in the distance, but the sound now held no menace. It spoke instead of endurance, of the countless stories sheltered within these old timbers. Tales of struggle, certainly, but also of resilience, of unexpected grace. I closed the kitchen door, sealing out the darkness. Whatever dawn might unveil, tonight offered refuge, nourishment, and the possibility of understanding. Sometimes, that fragile offering is enough to alter a path. Watching Leo devour scrambled eggs and toast with a desperate hunger, it occurred to me that the true intruder I'd confronted wasn't hiding in the barn. It was fear, my own fear of the unknown, of disruption, of the world beyond my fences. By choosing compassion over suspicion, perhaps I hadn't just offered a lifeline to this lost young man. Perhaps I had also liberated something within myself. The farm felt different now, less an isolated bastion, more a quiet harbor in turbulent waters. Silas settled by my boots, his gaze steady on Leo. The intruder, I realized, had inadvertently gifted me something invaluable. A sharp reminder that even deep into life's autumn, discovery and learning remained possible. As the first tentative strokes of dawn painted the eastern sky, I poured more coffee, bracing for the conversation to come. It would be demanding, uncertain. Yet for the first time in what felt like a long while, I felt keenly, vibrantly awake. The night began with a complaining hinge and unsettling sounds. It was culminating in the profound, challenging prospect of making a difference. And that, surely, is the most vital adventure of all. That Saturday, the afternoon sun beat down with a heavy fist as I drifted into the sprawling chaos of the used furniture fair. No quest propelled me, only the familiar comfort of wandering among forgotten relics, tracing the lines of old lamps, appraising the silent histories of peculiar chairs. Then, arresting color snagged my eye. A Persian rug, folded like a secret upon a stark metal rack, nudged against anonymous cardboard boxes. Its vibrancy pulsed even in the heat-shimmered air. When I inquired, the stallholder, a man whose eyes held the weary indifference of countless such afternoons, confirmed its age, its decent condition. He gestured vaguely towards its heart. "Small stain, middle," he murmured, a shrug punctuating the disclosure, as if it were a mere speck of dust. The price felt like an afterthought, a negligible sum. Almost without volition, I agreed. Hoisting it towards my car, a sharp protest flared in my lower back. The thing possessed an unexpected gravity. Its fibers were dense, the weave tight and intricate under my straining fingers. I recall wrestling its folded bulk into the trunk, the stiff edges resisting. A scent arose, dry, ancient dust mingled with an undertone I couldn't place, something metallic yet organic. Old fabric, I reasoned, dismissing the faint prickle of unease. Unfurled within the confines of my modest living room, it consumed the floor, a sea of complex patterns bordering deep reservoirs of crimson and midnight blue. Yet it was the center that commanded attention, that held the gaze captive. The stain, less a spill, more a deliberate void. It formed the crude silhouette of a recumbent figure. The edges bled raggedly, suggesting not bleach, but perhaps some slow, corrosive consumption of the dye itself. leaving behind a shape vaguely human, roughly 4 feet in length, a dull, brownish-gray map of absence, undeniably old, yet stark against the richness surrounding it. A tremor of disquiet surfaced, but I submerged it, just a peculiar discoloration, a scar from decades past. That first night, leaving it spread beneath the familiar constellations of my ceiling, I retreated to bed near midnight. My bedroom, down the hall, offered a partial vista of the living room. My final glance before darkness fell lingered on the rug. A faint chill traced my sternum, the air conditioning vent, I assumed, exhaling its cool breath. I shrugged it away. Sleep came, but fractured around 3 in the morning. A cold dew slicked my forehead, the sheets clinging damply. Dread, thick and formless, lingered from dreams I couldn't recall. Then a sound, soft, furtive, like heavy cloth whispering against floorboards. I sat bolt upright, breath caught, heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. The air conditioner, a draft wrestling with the window panes. "Relax," I commanded the trembling silence within me. Lying back down offered no solace. Sleep remained elusive for another hour's passage. Morning light offered no absolution. I stood in the living room doorway, scrutinizing the rug. It lay unchanged. The stain remained that unsettling contour, no larger, no diminished. Stepping onto it, my bare feet registered only the dense pile, the expected texture of thick wool. No dampness, no fresh demarcations. The nocturnal noise must have been imagined, a trick of a tired mind. Coffee was brewed, breakfast consumed, a conscious effort made to banish the rug from my thoughts. Yet, throughout the day, a subtle wrongness persisted. My skin felt clammy despite the outdoor warmth. My gaze kept snagging on the rug, drawn to it from the periphery. Each time I passed, a fleeting impression arose, the outline sharpening, gaining definition, but a direct stare revealed only the same faded ambiguity. I resolved to ignore it, immersing myself in errands, the rhythm of laundry, the mundane bulwark against creeping unease. Evening found me sunk into the couch, the glow of my phone a small island in the dimming room. Again and again, my eyes flickered to the rug. Then I saw it, or thought I did. A tremor, a faint undulation rippling through the outline in the fabric. My stomach clenched violently. Scrambling up, I slapped the overhead light switch, flooding the room with harsh illumination. Under the glare, the stain lay inert, perfectly still, a pallid shape mocking my reaction. Foolishness washed over me. I killed the light, resumed my seat. 10 minutes later, in the returning gloom, a subtle shift registered again. Not a twitch this time, but a slow, almost imperceptible quiver along the stain's edges. Tension seized my neck and shoulders. A fine tremor started in my hands. Unable to reconcile sight with reason, I fled the living room, retreating to my bedroom, closing the door firmly behind me. My heart pounded a frantic cadence against my ribs. Slow, deliberate breaths did little to quell the rising tide of panic. The second night descended into deeper disturbance. Awakening near the same hour, a chill radiated not from the air, but from deep within my bones. My throat felt constricted, jaw clamped tight, mouth arid as desert sand. Propelled by a dread I couldn't articulate, I returned to the living room, clicked on a lamp, and confronted the rug. The outline persisted, silent under the artificial light. No movement met my gaze, yet gooseflesh prickled across my arms. My ears burned, my own breathing loud, echoing in the stillness. I paced around it, circling, searching for any alteration, any sign. It remained immutable. Eventually, extinguishing the lamp, I retreated once more, but sleep was a shallow, restless country I barely visited. By the third morning, the need for action became imperative. From a drawer, I unearthed a tape measure. Kneeling, I stretched it across the stain, approximating head to foot, 4 feet, just as I'd initially gauged. The width, near where shoulders might be, spanned roughly 2 feet. I scribbled the numbers onto a stray receipt. Work provided a temporary distraction, but upon returning home, the tape measure was my first destination. I measured again, 4 feet and half an inch. The width fractionally more than 2 feet. Perhaps my morning measurement had been hasty, inaccurate. Carefully, meticulously, I measured twice more. The numbers fluctuated slightly, refusing to align perfectly with the morning's record. User error, I insisted inwardly, striving to dismiss the discrepancy. But the thought lodged itself, a knot tightening in my gut for the remainder of the night. An attempt at cleansing followed. Armed with a sponge and soapy water, I knelt and scrubbed at the stain embedded in the rug's heart. The outline yielded nothing, refusing to fade. Instead, as I worked, a faint, low vibration pulsed beneath my hand, like a distant electrical hum, a current flowing through the very fibers. I snatched my hand back, heart leaping, pulse thundering in my ears. Leaning in again, pressing the sponge cautiously down, the sensation was gone. Imagination, anxiety manifesting as a physical tremor, uncertainty gnawed. That night, sleep deteriorated further. Each time darkness claimed my vision, the stain bloomed behind my eyelids, spreading, its edges resolving into limbs, hinting at a face. My eyes would snap open. I'd scan the doorway, straining to hear past the blood rushing in my ears. Once, a distinct scratching noise materialized, fingernails dragging across wood. I froze, mind instantly supplying rational explanations. Rodents, the house settling, yet simultaneously picturing that shape stirring. My chest constricted. After a minute suspended in absolute silence, I rose, crept to the living room. All was still. The rug lay flat, the stain a dark, quiescent figure embedded within it. On the fourth morning, the tape measure delivered its verdict. 4 feet, 2 inches. A prickling sensation crawled across my scalp. I raked a hand through my hair, my breath catching shallowly in my throat. The width, too, had expanded, exceeding 2 feet by perhaps a 1/4 inch more than the previous day. Seizing the rug's edges, I began to wrestle it into a roll, intending to banish it to the garage. It resisted, feeling impossibly heavier than when I'd first carried it inside. My arms trembled with the effort. Sweat beaded on my forehead. Folding it in half took agonizing minutes, the stain bending upon itself in a way that churned my stomach, evoking the grotesque image of snapping a spine. Chest aching, I finally managed to subdue it into a tight cylinder. I hauled it to the garage, deposited it in a shadowed corner, and returned inside, gulping air, trying to force calm upon my ragged nerves. That evening, I attempted normalcy, putting on a movie. The bare floor felt exposed, cold beneath my feet. Restlessness plagued me. Every creak of the house, every hum of the refrigerator seemed amplified, pregnant with menace. I kept pausing the film, listening intently to the silence. My heart leapt at phantoms, a perceived shuffle, an imagined click. Defeated, I turned off the television and sought refuge in bed long before my usual hour. Again, the familiar 3 o'clock awakening, this time accompanied by a gasp for air. The bedroom air was frigid, as if a window stood open to the night, though all remained sealed. Then, a distinct, muffled thump echoed from the direction of the garage. Nausea surged, twisting my insides. Forcing myself from bed, I retrieved a flashlight from the nightstand. My hand shook as it closed around the garage doorknob. I eased the door open. Darkness greeted me, thick and still. The flashlight beam sliced through the gloom, sweeping across tools, shelves, concrete. The rug lay where I'd left it, still rolled tight. Nothing seemed disturbed, no intruder present. Yet emanating from the vicinity of the rug, I sensed a faint, unnatural warmth, a subtle heat radiating outwards. My skin began to itch insistently. I backed away slowly, pulled the door shut, and twisted the lock. Morning brought a fragile resolve. Rationality dictated I dispose of the rug permanently, sell it, dump it, anything. Yet the prospect of handling it again filled me with a profound reluctance. Steeling myself, I went to the garage, compelled to unroll it one last time upon the concrete floor, to measure it again. As it lay flat, the change was immediate, undeniable. The outline had stretched, now reaching nearly 4.5 feet. The shape was more articulated, the upper corners suggesting nascent arms. My throat clamped shut. Bending with the tape measure, a dull odor reached me, reminiscent of old iron, of decaying cloth. Gooseflesh tightened the skin on my arms. My eyes stung slightly. Urgency propelled me. I dragged the rug across the garage floor, its weight seeming to increase with every foot. My muscles screamed in protest. Getting it into the car's trunk proved another struggle, a frantic bout of pushing and shoving, sweat stinging my eyes. The rug's edges rasped against the metal, a sound that frayed my already raw nerves. Finally, with a slam of the trunk lid, it was contained. I drove to a local thrift store, affecting a casual air as I lugged the rug inside. The cashier offered a cursory glance, no questions asked. Donation, I stated briefly. She nodded, provided a slip. I fled, relief washing over me in a dizzying wave. That night brought deeper sleep, disturbed only once near dawn by a residual chill, easily dismissed. Perhaps I dared to hope it was finally over. 2 days later, returning from work, I stepped into my living room. And froze. It was there, unrolled, centered, occupying the floor as if it had never left. My heart seemed to stop, then resumed with painful force. My knees buckled. A pins and needles sensation rushed through my hands, followed by a wave of heat that stole my breath. How? The doors had been locked, my keys secure. No one else had entry. My gaze fixed on the shape within the rug. Larger still, 5 feet now, easily. The shoulders distinct, a defined neck, the suggestion of a head. Bile surged into my throat. Thoughts scattered like frightened birds. Backing slowly out of the room, eyes locked on the outline, my arms shook uncontrollably. My tongue felt thick and dry. Fumbling for my phone, I activated the camera, attempting to record from the hallway, zooming in. The screen showed only the static shape. Waiting, watching for minutes that stretched into eternity, I saw it. a faint quiver rippling along the outline's edge. My heart hammered against my ribs with such violence I feared I might faint. Calling the police was impossible. What explanation could I offer? No intruder, no crime scene, just a rug containing a shape that defied expulsion, that defied reason. Destruction seemed the only recourse left. From the kitchen, I retrieved a heavy pair of shears, returning to the living room on legs that felt unsteady, muscles coiled tight. Crouching, I tried to sever the fibers. The material resisted, thick and dense. I managed a small incision near the edge, but the scissors snagged, refusing to cut cleanly. I hacked at it for several minutes, breath coming in ragged gasps, sweat plastering hair to my forehead. Then, a low, rippling sound whispered through the room, almost like stifled laughter, though it could have been the grating of the blades. I dropped the scissors, scrambling backward, heart pounding. Seeking refuge, needing not to see it, I grabbed an old blanket from the closet and flung it over the rug, shrouding the shape from view. Sinking onto the couch, back pressed hard against the cushions, I tried desperately to formulate a plan, but my mind remained a frantic whirl. 9 p.m. I tried the television again, a futile attempt at distraction, my gaze continually drawn to the blanket-covered mound. At one point, a soft, shuffling noise emanated from beneath the covering. I stared, breath held captive in my chest. The blanket stirred, just slightly, as if something shifted underneath. A vice tightened around my chest. I gripped the couch arm, unable to compel myself to lift the blanket, simply staring, eyes burning from lack of blinking, until the image blurred. Eventually, I forced myself towards the bedroom, locking the door, though the gesture felt utterly symbolic. Sliding down the wall, I sat on the floor, my body racked with tremors. Cold sweat soaked through my shirt. I counted breaths, trying to impose order on the chaos within. Hours must have passed in this state, perched on the precipice of terror, too afraid to sleep. Every settling creak of the house sent jolts through my system. I don't know when exhaustion finally claimed me. I awoke abruptly to a sound directly outside my bedroom door. A soft, persistent scraping, like coarse fabric being dragged across the wood. I lay frozen, not daring to breathe, not daring even to swallow, waiting for a knock, a louder intrusion, but nothing more came. After an eternity, the sound seemed to recede, fading back into the oppressive silence. Now I remain, waiting. The conviction grows, inescapable. The stain intends to complete its formation. I picture it rising, coalescing, taking that first step off the fibers. The images haunt my waking hours, my fractured sleep. Though I've only witnessed fleeting twitches, ambiguous shivers easily dismissed by a rational mind, its presence is a palpable weight in the air, particularly as darkness falls. This morning's measurement, 5 feet, 3 inches. The arms possess clearer definition, the head a more distinct roundness. Getting rid of it is impossible. I know this now. Burning, cutting, discarding, futile gestures. It returns, always returns. Understanding. Why is a luxury I can no longer afford. I only know it grows incrementally, relentlessly, each time I dare to look, and I am terrified of the moment it reaches its culmination. I dread seeing its final form, yet suspect I will have no choice. Its presence permeates the atmosphere, infiltrates my very breath. This is why I articulate this now, breaking a silence born of fear and the certainty of disbelief. I seek neither sympathy nor validation, only the unburdening, the sharing of this encroaching horror, because the duration I can remain within these walls feels increasingly finite. The thought recurs, chillingly persistent. One day I will walk into my home and find the outline vacant on the rug, its former occupant standing before me. There seems nothing left to do. I am trapped, a spectator to its gradual becoming, day by terrifying day, inch by inexorable inch. And with the arrival of each night, the question looms, sharp and cold, will this be the night it emerges from its woven prison to confront me? I strive for composure, but my hands betray me with their ceaseless trembling. Thought fragments. Ignoring it is no longer an option. It is here. It waits. And I remain, too paralyzed by fear to flee, too terrified to truly watch. That first glimpse, a shape suspended in the bedroom's Stygian depths, hovering near my bed, felt ripped from some half-remembered fever dream. A silhouette, stark and utterly still against the ambient gloom. I blinked, chasing the phantom, and the space where it stood was merely empty air. If I'd only grasped then, in that fleeting moment of disorientation, that the true nightmare was only unfurling its dark wings. Barely a month had passed since I'd taken the lease. The flat was modest, certainly no showpiece, a compact one-bedroom tucked away on a drowsy street where silence reigned. Its chief virtue was the rent, suspiciously low, a detail that, in hindsight, should have screamed caution. But emerging raw from the wreckage of a relationship, desperate for sanctuary, I'd grasped at the first offer. When the landlord, a Mr. Silas, had walked me through, his gaze seemed to snag on corners a moment too long, his familiarity with the layout unnervingly innate, requiring no glance to confirm. Relief, however, had blinded me to these dissonant notes. The initial weeks unfolded with deceptive calm. Cardboard yielded its contents, possessions found their niches, and the fractured pieces of my life seemed to tentatively realign. Then began the subtle disturbances, the quiet unraveling of certainty. A novel, firmly planted on the coffee table, would reappear nestled amongst its brethren on the bookshelf. The milk level in the refrigerator dipped inexplicably. My preferred ceramic mug migrated to an unfamiliar cupboard shelf. Initially, I blamed fatigue, the fog of long hours at a demanding new job. Absent-mindedness, surely. Forgetting, misplacing, perfectly logical explanations. Yet the sensation of wrongness persisted, deepening with each passing day. It became a low hum beneath the surface of routine. Other inconsistencies surfaced. Returning from work, the apartment's atmosphere sometimes felt altered, charged, as if recently occupied. A faint, unfamiliar scent clung to the air, something stale, faintly organic, unsettling. Once, convinced I'd heard the soft pad of footsteps in the corridor just outside my bedroom door, deep in the night, I'd risen to investigate, only to find the passage utterly vacant, steeped in silence. It was perhaps 3 weeks into my tenancy when I awoke to the unsettling sight of my bedroom window gaping open. I religiously secured the latch each night, acutely aware of my ground floor vulnerability. A draft of cool, pre-dawn air traced gooseflesh along my arms as I padded across the floor to fasten it. That's when I saw it, a distinct, muddy impression marring the carpet just inside the sill. My pulse hammered against my ribs. A shadow? A trick of the low light? My mind scrabbled for rationalizations, but my gut knew better. Someone had stood within my room, breathing the same air, while I slept defenseless. The police came, listened with practiced patience, found nothing. No fractured locks, no telltale prints, nothing pilfered. Perhaps, they suggested gently, I'd left the window unsecured myself. Forgotten? The footprint? Likely my own, tracked in inadvertently. I nodded, wanting desperately to accept their benign explanation, yet a cold certainty coiled within me. They were mistaken. Sleep became elusive that night. Every settling groan of the old building, every sigh of wind rattling the panes, jolted me upright, heart thudding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. It was during one such hypervigilant interval that the figure materialized again, a dense column of shadow, standing sentinel at the foot of my bed, absolutely motionless. A strangled gasp escaped me as my hand flailed for the bedside lamp switch. Light flooded the room, banishing the apparition instantly. Gone. Just imagination, I insisted fiercely to myself. A phantom conjured by stress and sleeplessness. But the encounter left a residue of visceral fear. My nightly ritual intensified. Double-checking locks, wedging a sturdy chair beneath the bedroom doorknob. Moving out seemed the only sane option, yet the logistics, breaking the lease, the daunting search for another haven, felt insurmountable. Instead, a different resolve hardened within me. I acquired a small surveillance camera, cleverly disguised as a bedside digital clock, positioning it on the dresser to command a wide view of the room. If an intruder haunted my sanctuary, I would capture their image, drag them from the shadows into irrefutable light. Night after night yielded nothing remarkable. The camera faithfully recorded only my own restless slumber, a landscape of tossing sheets and shifting limbs. Then came the fourth night. I woke to the insistent chime of my alarm, moved through the familiar cadence of morning preparation, and departed for work. It wasn't until returning that evening, weary and preoccupied, that the camera resurfaced in my thoughts. Retrieving the memory card, I slotted it into my laptop. The footage that spooled across the screen turned my blood to ice water. It began innocuously, my sleeping form beneath the duvet. Then, time-stamped around 2:30 a.m., the bedroom door eased open, inch by silent inch. A figure slipped inside, navigating the darkness with an unnerving, practiced calm. Mr. Silas, my landlord. He paused just inside the doorway, simply observing me for a long moment, his stillness terrifying. Then, he began to drift through the room, his fingers trailing over my belongings, the bristles of my hairbrush, the cover of the book on my nightstand. He opened the closet, his hands brushing against my clothes, a grotesque intimacy. All the while, I slept on, utterly unaware. After perhaps 10 minutes of this silent violation, he approached the bed. Horror constricted my throat as I watched his recorded image lean down, his face descending until it hovered mere inches above my own sleeping countenance. He remained there, suspended in that predatory pose, for what felt like an agonizing eternity, just looking. Then, as soundlessly as he had arrived, he withdrew and vanished back through the doorway. Nausea churned within me. The profound sense of violation, the trespass not just against my space, but against my very self, was almost suffocating. Yet beneath the waves of disgust and terror, a sharper emotion began to crystallize. Cold, hard fury. The audacity. How many times had this spectral visit occurred? How many other unsuspecting tenants had endured this silent, creeping dread? My first instinct was the police, but doubt gnawed. Would they believe this? Could he twist it? Deny it? What if he discovered my knowledge, retaliated? No. I needed more than grainy footage. I needed to confront the phantom itself. A plan formed, desperate and precarious. The following night, I enacted my usual bedtime routine, extinguishing the lights, settling beneath the covers. But sleep was banished. Every nerve ending thrummed with tension. I lay rigid, listening, waiting. Hours crawled past in agonizing slowness. Just as doubt began to creep in, suggesting he might not appear, the faint, unmistakable click of the front door latch echoed through the silent apartment. My heart leaped, pounding a frantic tattoo I felt sure must be audible. Forcing slow, measured breaths, I tracked his stealthy progress through the outer room, the soft fall of his steps drawing nearer. The bedroom door handle turned, the hinges whispered open. I waited, sensing his presence coalesce near the bed, a palpable weight in the darkness. Then, in a single, explosive movement, I surged upright, simultaneously slapping the lamp switch. Mr. Silas stood frozen mid-step, caught in the sudden glare, eyes wide like a startled nocturnal creature. A beat of charged silence stretched between us. Then, impossibly, he smiled. Not a smile of warmth or surprise, but the chilling, self-assured smirk of a predator momentarily inconvenienced. "Awake, are we?" His voice was unnervingly level, almost conversational. "Get out," I managed, surprised by the steadiness that laced my own tone. "Leave now, or I swear I'm calling the police." He emitted a low chuckle, a grating sound that scraped against my raw nerves. "And report what, precisely?" "Your landlord exercising his right to enter the premises with his key. Perfectly within the terms of the lease, my dear." My hand darted towards my phone on the nightstand, but he moved with startling speed. His fingers clamped around my wrist, a vice-like grip that sent jolts of pain up my arm. "I wouldn't advise that," he hissed, the calm facade dissolving into naked menace. "You haven't the faintest idea what I'm truly capable of." In that instant, the full gravity of his derangement struck me. This wasn't merely about voyeurism. He was unstable, dangerous, and I was cornered. But the victim role felt alien, ill-fitting, not again. My free hand closed around the heavy base of the lamp. With a surge of adrenaline-fueled strength, I swung it, connecting solidly with the side of his head. A sickening crack echoed in the small room. He staggered back, his grip loosening reflexively. I didn't pause. Scrambling from the bed, I bolted through the doorway, across the living area, fumbling frantically with the deadbolt and chain on the front door. Behind me, I heard him cursing, his footsteps heavy, unsteady, but gaining ground. Finally, the lock yielded. I wrenched the door open and plunged into the relative safety of the building's hallway, pounding down the stairs 2 at a time, not risking a backward glance. I ran, fueled by terror, not stopping until the brightly lit sanctuary of the police station, 2 blocks distant, rose before me. Breathless, trembling, I poured out the entire story. This time, they truly listened. My statement was taken, the chilling video evidence examined on my phone. officers were dispatched immediately to apprehend Mr. Silas. It transpired I was far from his only prey. A subsequent search of his own apartment unearthed items connecting him to a pattern of burglaries and stalking incidents across the city. He resides now behind bars, awaiting the slow grind of justice. Yet sleep remains a fragile truce. Sometimes, in the deepest hours of the night, I jerk awake, convinced I feel unseen eyes upon me in the darkness. The apartment, of course, is a memory. I found a new place, far across town. Caution is now my constant companion, vigilance my creed. Locks are checked and rechecked, curtains remain drawn against the night. Paranoia, some might label it. I call it learned survival. Because the monsters we invent in childhood, the shadowed things beneath beds or lurking in closets, they are ephemeral. But real monsters exist. They walk among us, offer ingratiating smiles, hand over keys to apartments filled with cheap rent and profound darkness. And sometimes, the only defense is to drag them into the light, to expose their festering cause. It's a terrifying prospect, demanding a courage one might not know they possess. But it is necessary. Left unchallenged, they will continue to inhabit the shadows, watching, waiting, selecting their next target. So, heed that prickle of unease on your neck, that visceral whisper telling you something is fundamentally wrong. Trust that instinct, and never fear turning on the light, confronting whatever hides in the dark. Sometimes, illumination is the only exorcism that works. Let me be unequivocally clear. Spectral tenants in vacant high-rises, phantoms haunting empty corridors, these notions have always resided firmly outside my sphere of belief. Yet, within the steel and glass skeleton of the tower where I earn my living, something feels dissonant, fundamentally awry. I can no longer rationalize it away. The lift, specifically its behavior past the 11th hour, exhibits unnerving eccentricities that force a confrontation with my own pragmatism. Merely contemplating its use in the deep quiet of night tightens a knot of apprehension in my chest. Absurd, I know. Allow me, however, to delineate the sequence of events precisely, and you may form your own conclusions. My professional life unfolds within a 15-story commercial edifice. By 7 in the evening, the hum of commerce typically fades, leaving behind echoing silence. My own schedule often deviates where demanding reports necessitate late hours, and truth be told, I find solace in the post-Exodus tranquility. Focus sharpens in the stillness. Around 9 or 10, the custodial crew materializes, shadows armed with vacuums and waste bins, vanishing back into the urban sprawl by 11. After their departure, the building breathes emptiness, populated only by myself, perhaps a sentinel or two stationed on the ground floor, and the rare soul retrieving a forgotten artifact from their desk. Lost in labyrinthine spreadsheets and cascades of data, time frequently slips my grasp. A sudden glance at the clock reveals midnight's approach. Then begins the familiar ritual, securing my laptop, collating notes, and hastening towards the elevator bank. This routine held its unremarkable rhythm for months, until roughly 2 weeks passed, when the lift's illuminated panel began its strange caprices. One particular evening, the clock showed 20 minutes past 11. I traversed the corridor toward the main elevators on my floor, the 14th. The passage lay utterly vacated, Though technically illuminated, the hallway possessed a gloaming quality after hours, as if half the fixtures slumbered in power-saving mode. I depressed the call button. Standing there, foot tapping a nervous rhythm against the polished floor, I stared at the impassive steel doors, waiting. A soft chime announced its arrival. The doors parted. I stepped into the compartment, thumbing the button for G. Leaning against the cool rear wall, my eyes felt gritty, strained from hours bathed in screen glow. Just as the doors commenced their silent closure, I registered peripheral flickers. The buttons for floors 5, 7, and 10 glowed with sudden, unbidden life. My first thought, an accidental brush against the panel, was swiftly negated. My hand hovered nowhere near. Yet the lights persisted, impervious to my attempts to cancel them. The car initiated its descent. A mere electrical anomaly, I reasoned. Its first pause occurred at the 10th floor. Doors slid open onto Stygian darkness. All overhead illumination was extinguished, save for the faint greenish emergency beacons near the ceiling. I inclined my head, peering into the void. Nothing stirred. The corridor stretched away, an empty maw, utterly silent. I pressed the close door command, eager to continue downward, but the elevator lingered, suspended for several heartbeats longer than protocol dictated. It felt poised, expectant. A prickling sensation traced patterns across my arms. My stomach clenched. Finally, the doors sealed, and the descent resumed, terminating next at 7. An identical tableau unfolded, doors parting onto vacancy. Here the faint, sharp scent of cleaning solvents hung in the air, suggesting recent mopping, yet no custodial cart, no sign of human activity was visible. Again that protracted pause before movement recommenced. This time the fine hairs on my nape bristled. An empty floor, an utterly simple thing, yet it brewed a profound disquietude. The space felt not merely abandoned, but watched. Then, the 5th floor. The doors retracted, revealing a corridor still bathed in standard lighting. More jarringly, the door to one of the offices stood ajar, a distinct irregularity, as all suites were mandated locked by 7. A greeting almost escaped my lips, but instinct clamped it shut. A sudden surge of adrenaline advised anonymity. Drawing attention felt unwise. My hand darted out, tapping the close door button once more. This time, it obeyed without hesitation. The lift conveyed me smoothly to the ground level. Emerging, I anticipated seeing Marcus, the night guard, at the reception desk. He wasn't there. A quick scan located him outside the main entrance, haloed by the glow of a cigarette. I offered no account of the journey. A technical bug seemed the most plausible, least unsettling explanation. The following day proceeded without incident, the previous night's strangeness receding under the pressure of deadlines. I worked until 10:30, took the elevator down uneventfully, and repeated this normalcy the subsequent night. The anomaly, I concluded, had been singular, but then, several days later, it recurred. Nearing midnight, I entered the lift, selected G, and watched, heart thudding against my ribs, as 8 and 13 illuminated themselves. I attempted detachment, but that familiar chill returned, ghosting over my skin. At 13, the doors opened to an atmosphere thick with a musty odor, redolent of aged cardboard and stagnant air. I waited, straining to hear anything beyond my own amplified breathing in the confined space. Then, a faint clatter resonated from somewhere deep down the hallway, perhaps a loose latch, or a small metallic object striking the floor. It was fleeting, yet it made me jump. I slapped the close door button, relief washing over me as the doors obeyed promptly. On the ground floor, Marcus was engrossed in his phone. Again, silence seemed the wisest counsel. How could I articulate this mounting unease over an elevator's eccentricities without sounding foolish? Still, the incidents weighed on me. My nights acquired a new texture. Stress. Completing my work now carried the additional burden of anticipating the elevator descent. The building possessed a stairwell, certainly, but 15 flights downward, particularly when exhausted and encumbered by a heavy bag, felt daunting. My knees protested at the mere thought, so I persisted with the lift, despite the tendrils of dread it cultivated. Then came the Thursday evening that fractured my resolve. Around 11:30, having put the final polish on a marketing analysis, I gathered my belongings and exited my 14th floor office. The corridor lay steeped in silence. I approached the elevator bank as usual, summoned the car, and waited. When the doors opened, I stepped inside, pressing G with reflexive speed. Floors 10 and 12 immediately lit up alongside it. I recoiled from the panel, pulse hammering in my ears. "Stay calm," I admonished myself. Ignoring it felt impossible this time. I pressed the lit buttons for 10 and 12 again, testing, hoping they might extinguish. They remained stubbornly illuminated. The elevator descended first to 12. The doors parted. The corridor beyond was penumbral, only 1 or 2 ceiling fixtures casting weak pools of light. My stomach felt taut as a drumskin. Without stepping out, I leaned forward, gripping the door frame. "Hello?" I called out, my voice sounding thin, swallowed by the space. "Is anyone there?" The echo returned, unaccompanied. I thought I detected a whisper, faint as settling dust, but it could easily have been the ventilation system or some other mechanical sigh. After a few tense seconds, I pressed the close door button. We moved down to 10. The doors opened. This hallway was darker still. Save for a single bulb adjacent to the elevator shaft, the corridor plunged into absolute blackness. I hesitated. Perhaps another elevator. The stairs, but the doors were already open, fatigue weighing heavily upon me. I remained within the car. It was then that I heard it, a peculiar noise, like diminutive wheels squeaking, rolling across the floor, the sound signature of a small trolley, perhaps, or a suitcase being dragged. It emanated from the right, swallowed by the darkness beyond the elevator's feeble light. My pulse accelerated, my throat went dry. "Hey," I managed, my voice strained. "Do you need assistance?" Silence answered. I listened, acutely aware of my own ragged breathing, my palms slick with sweat against the handle of my laptop bag. Then, soft footfalls, seemingly retreating. They faded within moments, leaving me suspended in waiting silence. I was just reaching for the close door button when a violent concussion shattered the quiet. A loud bang, as if something substantial had impacted a metal surface. I flinched violently, my shoulders jerking upwards. My gaze swept the impenetrable darkness outside the doors. Nothing was visible. I jabbed the close button repeatedly, frantically. The elevator remained stubbornly open, unresponsive for what felt like an eternity. My eyes darted, scanning the unseen corridor, searching for any sign of presence. The air grew thick with the scent of disturbed dust. Finally, agonizingly slowly, The doors began to slide shut. Just then, the overhead light in the elevator car stuttered. Off, on, off again, shrinking the space, inducing a suffocating claustrophobia. My breath hitched. My heart pounded with a force I felt could resonate off the metal walls. After that terrifying pause, the elevator continued its downward journey, though the ride felt jarring, uneven, as if the mechanism struggled. My knees were liquid. I clutched the handrail for support, every second stretched, pregnant with the expectation of another sudden halt. But none came. It reached the ground floor without further interruption. When the doors opened, I practically vaulted into the lobby. Marcus stood near the front desk, his attention on a small television screen. He registered my disheveled state, the pallor of my face. "Everything all right, Elias?" he inquired mildly. "Just tired," I mumbled, unwilling to elaborate, desperate only for the egress. He nodded, though a flicker of curiosity remained in his eyes. I just needed out. The following morning, the thought of reporting the elevator's behavior to building management surfaced, then submerged under the difficulty of articulating the experience without sounding unhinged. Perhaps it was faulty wiring, I told myself, triggering phantom floor selections. The sounds on the 10th floor, the rolling wheels, the jarring impact. I tried to dismiss them, but they replayed, unwelcome echoes in the quiet moments. What could have caused them, and why the suddenness, the violence? A few nights later, work once again kept me late. This time, I made for the stairwell. Pushing open the heavy fire door, I peered down into the dimly lit concrete shaft. 14 flights stretched below. The illumination was sparse, flickering intermittently on some landings. Taking a deep breath, I began the descent. By the 10th floor, my thighs burned. I paused, catching my breath, my eyes drawn to the small, wired glass window in the landing door. Beyond it lay the 10th floor corridor, shrouded in darkness. Merely looking at it constricted my chest. The memory of the noises, that sharp report, urged me onward. I forced myself to continue the downward trek. Reaching the ground floor felt like emerging from a deep dive, sweating, legs trembling with fatigue. Marcus offered a puzzled glance as I limped past, to which I responded with a curt nod before escaping into the night. The descent was punishing, but undeniably preferable to the unnerving lottery of the midnight elevator. My calves protested vehemently the next day. I tried to mask my discomfort, but a slight limp betrayed me. Inquiries from colleagues were deflected with vague mentions of a strenuous workout. I confided in no one within my department about the elevator. A casual attempt to probe Marcus yielded little. He shrugged, claiming ignorance of anything overtly strange, though he did concede that the elevator sometimes moved between floors autonomously late at night, part of a maintenance cycle, he presumed, or some automated function. Crucially, he'd never heard unusual noises. His nonchalance offered no comfort. Now, as the clock creeps towards 11 each evening, I remain at my desk. That familiar knot tightens in my stomach. I find myself accelerating my pace, compulsively checking the time. Some nights, summoning a fragile courage, I risk the elevator, holding my breath throughout the descent, praying the panel remains quiescent. On other nights, resignedly, I opt for the stairs, accepting the inevitable 2-day soreness as the price of peace of mind. The elevator's behavior remains unpredictable, random, One evening, I ventured a question to Javier, the lead custodian. Had his crew observed anything unusual on the 10th floor? He confirmed finding the hallway lights inexplicably extinguished on occasion, despite their programming to remain on until dawn. But of strange sounds, he mentioned none beyond the occasional loud clang from the HVAC system, common enough in old buildings, he assured me. His explanation felt inadequate. The sound I'd heard wasn't the resonant echo of ductwork settling. It was a forceful impact, sharp and sudden, like a heavy door slammed or a weighty object dropped. And the rolling sound possessed a distinct cadence, suggesting deliberate movement, someone pulling something cumbersome. Yet officially, no one works that late on 10. The possibility of an illicit tenant, some unseen occupant utilizing a vacant office after dark, has crossed my mind. Confronting a stranger in a shadowed hallway is a prospect nearly as chilling as any spectral hypothesis. A human agent could explain the noises, perhaps, but not the elevator selecting floors of its own accord. Lately, a heightened vigilance shadows me. I strive to depart by 9, escaping the building before its deeper quiet descends. My manager, noting my earlier departures, commended my apparent commitment to a healthier work-life balance, asking no further questions. But the demands of the job are immutable. Some nights, escape by 9 remains impossible. On those evenings, shutting down my computer precipitates a wave of palpable foreboding. If, by chance, I encounter another colleague leaving simultaneously, I invent a pretext to share the lift, clinging to the frail hope that company might deter the phenomenon, or at least provide a witness should it manifest. Most often, however, I am alone. The tower's silence magnifies every trivial sound into something potentially significant. I find myself contemplating drastic measures, requesting a transfer to a different office location, even considering relocating my residence closer to facilitate working from home. It sounds extreme, I realize, but the experiences refuse to fade. The tableau on the 10th floor remains vivid. The insidious squeak of wheels, the ghostly retreat of footsteps, the stunning violence of the crash. I recall the visceral terror as the elevator lights stuttered, my heart threatening to batter its way free of my ribs. Those few seconds stretched into an agonizing miniature eternity, fraught with the expectation of something emerging from the darkness. No one has been harmed, no disappearances noted, no definitive apparition witnessed, only tenebrous corridors and suggestive shadows. And yet, the fear is undeniably real, physiologically potent. The sweating palms, the racing pulse, the trembling limbs. This is not mere imagination run rampant. Something profoundly strange transpires in that elevator shaft after 11 o'clock. I level no accusations, offer no definitive theory. I merely recount what has occurred. It is not standard for a lift to embark on unrequested detours. It is not commonplace to hear inexplicable, alarming sounds in deserted hallways late at night. Whatever the source, I am finished tempting fate. My work necessitates my presence in this building, but caution will henceforth be my constant companion. If departure after 11 is unavoidable, the stairs, however punishing to my knees, will be my route, at least until a more permanent solution presents itself. This is my current reality. Proof remains elusive, yet the evidence of my senses, the testimony of my own fear, cannot be ignored. 10 minutes, a sliver of time carved out post-shift, my sanctuary after the clatter and steam of the coffee house. Just 10 minutes cocooned in my car, the digital scroll a balm against the day's fray, insistent patrons, the intricate dance of espresso shots and frothed milk. This ritual, brief yet essential, unfolds in the familiar parking space before our house. It's a pocket of twilight, close enough for the porch lamp's amber glow, distant enough from the street lamp's sterile glare to feel utterly mine. Celeste, my mother, finds it peculiar, this pause on the threshold of home. She can't grasp how these solitary breaths recalibrate my world before the tide of textbooks pulls me under. Tonight, however, the air itself feels altered. Autumn's usual crispness is replaced by a strange density, pressing against the glass like a held breath. My phone screen, usually a portal outwards, becomes a mirror, catching a flicker in the gloom behind me, a phantom shape dissolving at the periphery. A swift turn reveals nothing but the mundane tableau. Our slumbering suburban street, Mrs. Albright and her diminutive terrier tracing their usual path. Her wave is a familiar punctuation mark. Mine, a response attempting to dispel the tendrils of unease coiling within my chest. I return to the hypnotic glow of the screen, the endless cascade of fleeting videos. Yet vigilance has sharpened my senses. The cooling engine ticks like a metronome counting down. Leaves whisper conspiracies in the breeze. Down the block, a stray feline sends a bin clattering, a sound magnified in the sudden quiet. The shadows pooling in my rearview mirror seem inkier, deeper. Another movement, sharper this time, reflected in the wing mirror. A figure dipping low behind my vehicle. Ice floods my veins. My fingers grapple for the keys. Instinct screaming for the mad dash to the illuminated porch. Before thought translates to action, our front door bursts open. Celeste stands silhouetted against the interior light, arms flailing, her voice stretched thin with a panic I've never heard. "Ilara! Inside! Now!" The raw fear in her tone brooks no argument. Bag slung haphazardly, I bolt, clearing the porch steps in a single bound. Inside, the deadbolt clicks home, Celeste's hands trembling as she secures it. "Someone was watching you," she breathes, pulling me close, her embrace fierce. "I stepped out for the mail, saw him crouched right by your window, peering in. He had his phone raised, Ilara, like he was filming." My knees threaten to buckle as the weight of it lands. How long? How many other evenings had I sat here, lost in my digital refuge, oblivious to unseen eyes? Minutes later, flashing blue lights paint the street. The officers find little, footprints disrupting the damp earth beside the driver's side door, and something else that chills me to the bone. Revealed in the stark beam of a flashlight, smudged handprints, the ghostly imprint of a face pressed against my window. Condensation betrayed the intimacy of the violation, physical proof someone had leaned against my sanctuary, observing my private moments. The following day, Arthur, my father, installs motion-activated floodlights, stark sentinels guarding the perimeter. Celeste purchases cameras, sleek eyes that link our phones to our home's vulnerability. My brother, Liam, helps me apply a dark tint to my car windows. Visibility outwards preserved, intrusion inwards denied. These small fortifications rebuild a fragile sense of security. But the tremor spreads beyond our walls. Mrs. Albright galvanizes the street into a neighborhood watch, Security footage is shared, walking routes coordinated, unfamiliar vehicles noted. Police patrols intensify during the evening commute hours. At the coffee house, my manager revises closing procedures. No one leaves unaccompanied after dark. Brighter lights now flood the employee lot, monitored by newly installed cameras covering every conceivable angle. Regular customers morph into informal escorts, walking staff to their cars, a quiet network of protection weaving itself through the community fabric. My 10-minute decompression continues, but its form has shifted. Now it unfolds in the brightly lit break room, or on our illuminated porch, or within the living room's drawn curtained embrace. Sometimes Celeste joins me, not hovering, but simply present, a quiet anchor. These moments, paradoxically, feel more sacred now, cherished not for their solitude, but for their safety. The Watcher is never identified, but his shadow lengthens as similar reports surface across town. Young people trailed from work, furtive photography, through house windows, inexplicable handprints discovered on morning dew-kissed glass. A disturbing mosaic of predatory surveillance emerges. Yet our neighborhood doesn't succumb to fear. Instead, a quiet resolve takes root. Self-defense workshops materialize at the community center. Local shops declare themselves safe havens, offering refuge to anyone feeling uneasy. Teenagers attend talks on situational awareness, on honoring that primal gut feeling. One morning, vibrant chalk messages bloom on the pavement outside our house. You are not alone. We watch out for each other. The entire street is adorned, a colorful testament to collective vigilance. Mrs. Albright later confesses, with a twinkle in her eye, to recruiting the middle school art club for the clandestine operation. The ordeal reshaped my understanding of private moments. Their necessity remains, vital pauses in a clamoring world. But true privacy, I now see, isn't synonymous with isolation. It's the secure space fostered by community, the freedom to lower your guard because others are watching over you, not watching you. Last week, I saw a girl, younger than me, sitting in her car after school, phone aglow. I saw my past self in her posture, that same yearning for a quiet interlude. Instead of passing by, I paused, maintaining a respectful distance until she looked up. We spoke, bridging the gap between solitude and awareness, discussing the balance between mental respite and vigilance. My car windows now bear different kinds of prints, colorful drawings from the cafe's children's art sessions, uplifting phrases penned in washable marker, affirmations that this space, once violated, is now visibly cherished and protected. Vulnerability transformed into a canvas of resilience. Sometimes, late at night, the instinct remains. An extra glance in the rearview mirror, a startle at a sudden noise in the dark. But these echoes don't govern me. They are reminders. Stay alert. Trust intuition. Maintain the boundaries that ensure safety. Because the deepest lesson of that night wasn't about the loss of privacy, but about its redefinition. It's not a given right, but a collective creation, built through shared awareness, mutual support, and the courage to turn fear into connection. My 10 minutes of peace feel richer than ever, not for being solitary, but for being held safe within a community's watchful embrace. The basement door's groan echoed upwards, a sound like old bones settling, instantly prickling the hairs on my neck. 3 weeks we'd inhabited this house. 3 weeks I'd treated that subterranean gloom, thick with the scent of damp earth and decay, as forbidden territory. But Sophie's favorite red ball, escaping her grasp, had bounced with cheerful finality down those shadowed steps. Avoidance was no longer an option. A resigned sigh, a flick of the switch bathing the landing in stark light, and I began the descent into the abyss beneath our lives. That's when the impossible confronted me, sunk into the foundation wall, a door that had no earthly reason to exist. We'd acquired the Blackwood place on Sycamore Lane for what felt like a song, a melody slightly off-key perhaps. It wore its age like a skeletal charm, demanding restoration, yet in the current feeding frenzy of the market, it was a prize. Clara, my wife, had been instantly smitten by the latticed embrace of the wraparound porch. Our daughter, Sophie, vibrated with excitement over a bedroom solely her own. As for me, Arthur, the simple weight of the keys, the deed in my name, felt like grasping a tangible piece of some promised, half-forgotten contentment. Those initial weeks blurred into a montage of cardboard mountains, the fumes of fresh paint, the gradual imposition of our rhythms onto the house's ancient pulse. We were architects of our new reality, too preoccupied to truly register the dissonant notes, the phantom chill that sometimes pooled in the living room corner, the capricious flicker of overhead lights defying explanation, the furtive scrabbling within the walls I readily dismissed as the industry of unseen rodents. Standing there now, however, in the basement's cool, still air, mesmerized by that incongruous portal, the accumulated strangeness coalesced into undeniable presence. It was archaic, visibly far older than the surrounding structure. The wood, nearly black with age and grime, bore the faint tracery of symbols etched deep into its grain, sigils I couldn't decipher but felt in my marrow. No knob, no handle, only a corroded iron ring, stark against the dark timber, and its dimensions were unsettlingly wrong, barely 4 feet tall, a doorway built for something not quite human-sized. "Clara," my voice tight, climbed the stairs. "Could you come down here, just for a moment?" Her tread overhead, lighter than the rhythmic tap on the wooden stairs. "Arthur, what is it? Did you find Sophie's ball?" Her question died on her lips as her gaze followed mine, a sharp intake of breath. "What in God's name is that?" "You had no idea this was here?" I asked, the question rhetorical, the answer echoing in her wide, disbelieving eyes. She shook her head, a slow, negative arc. "It wasn't disclosed. It wasn't on any blueprints we saw. Arthur, where did it come from?" My hand lifted, drawn towards the rough wood, but an instinct, cold and deep, arrested the motion. A primal warning, some thresholds are best left uncrossed. "Should we try it?" Clara whispered, her voice thin as spider silk. Before the words could form on my tongue, Sophie's bright call floated down from the world above. "Mommy, Daddy, ball." Clara and I locked eyes, a silent, fraught exchange. "Later," I murmured, the decision tasting like postponement, not resolution. "We deal with this later." We ascended, pulling the basement door shut with a decisive thud, sealing the enigma below. Yet the image remained, seared onto my inner eye. The diminutive door, the cryptic marks. What secrets did it guard? And how had it remained unseen until this very moment? Night fell, thick and absolute. Sophie slept, oblivious in her new room. Clara and I sat opposite each other at the kitchen table, the silence punctuated only by the house's nocturnal sighs. Mugs of coffee, long since surrendered to the cold, stood between us like neglected sentinels. "We have to call the agent tomorrow," Clara stated, her voice flat. "Maybe it's an old access panel, a coal chute." I offered a non-committal nod, though the explanation felt hollow, insufficient. Coal chutes didn't radiate a palpable sense of dread. They weren't adorned with unsettling glyphs. "Yes," I agreed, the word devoid of conviction. "First thing." Sleep, when we finally sought it, was a restless, shallow thing. I drifted in a sea of fragmented anxieties, my thoughts orbiting the basement's secret. Then, piercing the pre-dawn stillness around 2, it came, a dull thump, succeeded by a dry, dragging scrape. The sound originated from below. I sat bolt upright, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. Clara stirred, her voice thick with sleep. "Arthur, what is it?" "Shh," I hissed, straining to hear. "Listen." Again, the noise resonated upwards, louder now. Thump! Scrape! As if something cumbersome, something reluctant, was being hauled across the concrete floor. Clara's fingers clamped onto my arm, her grip bruising. "What is that sound?" I swung my legs over the side of the bed, my hand instinctively finding the smooth, cool wood of the baseball bat propped in the corner, a flimsy totem against the unknown. "Going to see?" "Arthur, don't!" Clara pleaded, her voice taut with fear. "Call someone, the police." But a grim momentum propelled me forward. Likely just raccoons got in somehow. Back in a minute. The lie felt thin, even to my own ears. Down the stairs I crept, each riser groaning its protest under my weight. The scraping intensified with proximity to the basement door. My hand trembled as it closed around the cold metal knob. Darkness pooled at the bottom, pierced only by weak shards of moonlight filtering through the grimy high windows. I fumbled along the wall for the light switch, my gaze fixed on the far corner where the anomalous door resided. The overhead fluorescent tube stuttered, flickered violently, then burst into a harsh, sterile glare, painting the cellar in stark contrasts of light and shadow. And there it was, the small door, hanging open. Air hitched in my lungs. It gaped slightly ajar, revealing not structure or space, but an impenetrable, absorbing blackness. The scraping sound issued directly from that void, louder, more insistent. One hesitant step forward, then another. The bat felt absurdly inadequate, slick with the sweat of my palm. "Hello?" The word wobbled, a fragile thing in the heavy silence. "Is anyone down here?" The scraping ceased instantly. The silence pressed in, absolute, profound. And then, from the Stygian depths beyond the miniature door, a sound slithered into the stillness, freezing the marrow in my bones. A giggle, soft, high-pitched, a child's giggle. I stumbled backward, the bat nearly slipping from my grasp. "Sophie?" The name escaped me, a desperate, nonsensical plea. I knew she wasn't here. I'd checked on her just moments before, seen the steady rise and fall of her small chest beneath the blankets. The giggle echoed again, closer this time, imbued with a chilling intimacy, and then, slowly inching into view from the enveloping darkness, gripping the rough edge of the door frame, emerged a hand, small, bone-white, and utterly terrifying. I turned and fled. A primal surge of adrenaline propelled me up the stairs, taking them 2, 3 at a time. I slammed the basement door shut, the sound cracking through the house, and leaned against it, chest heaving, sucking in ragged breaths. Clara stood at the landing, her face a mask of stark terror in the dim hallway light. "Arthur, what was it? What did you see?" Words failed me. A frantic shake of my head, a gesture urging her back, upstairs, away. We checked Sophie again, blessedly still slumbering, then retreated to our bedroom, shoving a heavy dresser against the door. Sleep was unthinkable. We huddled together on the bed, prisoners in our own home, starting at every creak, every groan, every settling sigh of the old house around us. Dawn arrived not as a comfort, but merely as a change in the quality of light. We called the realtor. She arrived mid-morning, radiating professional calm, her smile firmly in place. "I'm absolutely certain it's nothing to be alarmed about," she chirped as we led her towards the basement stairs. "Older properties often have their little idiosyncrasies." Her practiced smile faltered, then dissolved completely as her eyes fell upon the small, dark door. "That," she stammered, her composure shattering. "That wasn't there before." We recounted the night's events, the sounds, the open door, the giggle, the spectral hand. She listened, her face growing progressively paler, her professional veneer stripped away layer by layer. When we finished, she drew a long, shaky breath. "I believe," she said, her voice low, "there's something I neglected to tell you about this place." The Blackwood place, she explained, carried a shadow, a history deliberately omitted from official records. Decades past, a family had resided here, parents and a young daughter. One ordinary afternoon, the little girl had simply vanished, utterly, inexplicably. The parents maintained she was abducted, but whispers turned to accusations, suspicion clinging to them like the damp basement air. Though never formally charged, they fled the town shortly after, unable to endure the sideways glances, the unspoken condemnations. "But the door?" Clara pressed, her voice trembling slightly. "What does that have to do with anything?" The realtor shook her head, her gaze drifting unwillingly towards the closed portal. "I can't say for sure, but stories have persisted. Odd noises, objects moving inexplicably, and some previous occupants they claimed to have seen." She hesitated, glancing towards the door again. "A child," I finished, the word tasting like ice. She nodded grimly. "I am so profoundly sorry. We truly believed. We had hoped the phenomena had ceased. It's been dormant for years, no reports filed." Silence descended, thick and heavy, punctuated only by the hum of the ancient furnace. We stood, 3 figures held captive by the presence of that small, unsettling door. Closed now, it looked almost ordinary, but the memory of the void behind it, the echo of that giggle, refuted any sense of normalcy. "What are our options?" I asked finally, the question hanging leaden in the air. The realtor let out a long sigh. "That decision rests with you. We can, of course, list the property immediately, disclose everything, or..." "Or what?" Clara urged. "Or," the realtor offered softly, hesitantly, "you could attempt to bring her peace, the girl. Perhaps her spirit lingers because of unfinished business, a need for release, for closure." I looked at Clara, saw the maelstrom of fear and desire warring in her eyes. This house, this flawed, haunted structure, was our haven, the foundation of our aspirations. Yet could we truly live here, shadowed by this knowledge? Could we raise Sophie under the eaves of another child's unresolved tragedy? Ultimately, we chose to remain. An uneasy truce was declared. We sought the solace of ritual, a priest's blessing upon the threshold, hours spent delving into brittle newspaper archives, even a tense, ultimately fruitless séance. For a time, the house seemed to exhale, the activity receding. The scratching fell silent. The spectral hand did not reappear. Yet sometimes, in the deepest hours of the night, when the world outside is hushed and still, I hear it. Faint, elusive, but unmistakable. A soft giggle drifting up from the cellar's depths. And I question our choice. Wonder if our presence offers comfort to a lost soul, or if we are merely deluding ourselves, living atop a simmering wound. Because the door remains, immutable. And occasionally, when mundane tasks draw me down those stairs, laundry, the furnace filter, my eyes betray me. Or perhaps they don't, for I could swear sometimes it's open, just a fraction, waiting, beckoning, and a cold tendril of curiosity, sharp and perilous, snakes through me, whispering, what lies beyond, should I ever find the courage or the madness to step across? Splintering glass ripped through the quiet, a jagged sound tearing me from sleep. My heart leaped, a frantic drum against my ribs. For a breath, stillness, a desperate hope it was merely the phantom echo of a nightmare. Then, the undeniable, measured groan of floorboards below. He was here, Julian. Despite every mile, every lock, every prayer whispered into the dark, he had found me. Bare soles met the chill embrace of polished wood, a silent slide from the deceiving warmth of the quilt. Tremors danced in my fingers as they closed around the smooth, weighted curve of the ash bat, a grim sentinel beside my bed. The bitter irony stung. This secluded haven, chosen for its promise of sanctuary, now felt suffocating, a meticulously constructed cage. Each step down the protesting staircase was a descent into deeper dread, the wood sighing under my weight. Lunar light strained through thin curtains, painted elongated, grasping shadows across the walls. My grip tightened on the bat, palm slick, the grain a rough anchor in a sea of fear. At the foot of the stairs, I held my breath, listening into the pregnant silence. The air itself felt disturbed, charged with an unseen presence. My eyes scanned the familiar contours of the living room, seeking disruption in the known. A betraying creak from behind. I spun, the bat arcing through the dimness in a blind, desperate sweep. It met resistance, a solid thud, a sharp intake of breath. A silhouette recoiled, clutching an arm. "Ilara?" The voice, gravelly and chillingly familiar, slithered into the space between heartbeats. You didn't actually believe you could vanish, did you? Julian materialized in a sliver of moonlight, his features a contorted mask of fury, laced with perverse amusement. The same broad frame, the same glacial eyes that could thaw with charm or freeze with cruelty. "Leave!" I commanded, my voice a thin reed striving for steel. "The police are a call away." A hollow laugh echoed, a sound that once charmed, now curdled my blood. "Let them come. By then we'll be distant travelers. It's time to return, Ilara, where you belong." I retreated, the bat a fragile barrier. "This is my home now. You have no place here." His eyes, stripped of all humor, narrowed. "Your place is decided, with me. Remember the words, till death." He surged, hand snatching at the wood. I recoiled, but his fingers found purchase. A grotesque tug-of-war commenced, the bat the rope between us, the acrid tang of spirits on his breath, the feral gleam in his eyes, harbingers of storms I knew too well. A surge of pure, primal desperation lent me strength. I ripped the bat free, swinging again. It struck his shoulder, a guttural roar of pain and fury answered. No hesitation. I fled towards the kitchen, towards the promise of the back door, escape, a neighbor's light, safety. A vice clamped around my ankle, yanking my feet from under me. The impact with the floor stole my breath. The bat skittered away. He dragged me back, flipping me onto my spine. His weight descended, pinning my arms, his face a canvas of incandescent rage inches from mine. "That was unwise," he snarled, breath hot and foul. Running, I could almost forgive. But this defiance. His fist rose, memories flooded, the helplessness, the sting, the shrinking terror. But this ground was different. Mine. Not the muted walls of before, but the foundation of a life I was building. Not again. As the blow descended, I twisted violently aside. Knuckles cracked against unforgiving oak. He howled. In that instant of loosened grip, I drove my knee upwards, finding its target with brutal accuracy. He buckled, folding inwards with a strangled gasp. I scrambled away, heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. Back in the living room, eyes darting, searching. They snagged on the heavy crystal vase, a gift from neighbors, solid and prismatic on the mantel. My fingers closed around its cool weight just as Julian filled the doorway, face distorted. "You," he hissed, venom dripping from the single word. "You will rue this moment." He lunged. This time, anticipation sharpened my reflexes. I swung the vase, a desperate, full-bodied arc, meeting his charge head-on. A sickening, wet crunch echoed in the stillness. He collapsed like a felled tree, landing heavily amidst the glittering rain of shattered crystal. Silence descended, broken only by my ragged breaths. Was he? The question pulsed with icy dread. I forced my trembling legs forward, knelt beside his inert form, a faint rise and fall of his chest. Alive, unconscious. Relief, potent and immediate, surged through me, chased instantly by renewed fear. He wouldn't remain this way. My phone felt alien in my shaking hand. 911. Waiting for the connection, my gaze remained locked on Julian, poised for flight at the slightest twitch. 911, what is your emergency? The disembodied calm nearly shattered my composure. Help! I choked out, voice fractured. My ex-husband. He broke in, attacked me. I hit him. He's unconscious. Please hurry. I don't know what happens when he wakes. I relayed the address, words tumbling out between ragged breaths, eyes fixed on the prone figure. They promised help was en route, advised finding safety. But rooted I remained, sentinel over the monster I'd felled. What if he rose before they came? Minutes stretched into elastic eternities. Distant sirens grew from a whine to a wail. A low groan escaped Julian's lips. He stirred. Panic seized me anew. Then, pulsing waves of red and blue light washed the room, banishing shadows. Car doors slammed. Heavy footfalls pounded the porch. Relief, sharp and painful, pierced through the fear. A firm knock. "Police! Open up!" I flung the door wide. 2 officers, poised, alert, their gazes sweeping over my disheveled state. "Ma'am, are you safe?" one asked, voice steady. "Where is he?" I gestured, wordless, towards the living room tableau. "There, he's moving." They moved past swiftly, professionally, converging on Julian. As cuffs clicked shut, the other officer turned back to me. "Are you injured? Require paramedics?" I shook my head, though a dull ache was blooming where floor met bone. "No, just shaken." Reinforcements arrived, paramedics too. The following hours dissolved into a haze of procedural questions, sterile forms, recounted terror. I watched numbly as they loaded Julian, face swollen and stained crimson, into the back of a cruiser. For a fleeting second, our eyes locked across the distance. Raw, undiluted hatred blazed in his gaze. This wasn't finished. Dawn painted the eastern sky in bruised purples and hesitant golds as I sat huddled on my porch steps, a borrowed blanket inadequate against the chill, coffee forgotten in my hand. Officer Davies, his nameplate red, settled beside me. "We'll keep a unit nearby for a few days," he murmured, "and pursuing a permanent protection order is crucial." I managed a numb nod. What now?" "Charges are substantial. Breaking and entering, assault, violation of the existing order. Given his history, the violence, he's facing significant incarceration." A cold comfort. "But not forever," I stated, the words flat. Davies paused, then conceded with a quiet gravity. "No, not forever, but you have breathing room now. Time to reinforce, to plan. You're not navigating this alone, Ms. Vance. There's support available." "I know," I interrupted, the edge in my voice surprising me. I inhaled slowly, softening. "I'm sorry, it's just, I thought I did everything. Moved away, new identity, started fresh. He still found his way here." The officer regarded me with quiet empathy. "You did what you needed to do. You endured. You defended yourself. That's not insignificant." My gaze drifted across the dew-kissed lawn to where the neighborhood stirred awake. A distant dog barked. A runner waved, oblivious. "I won't run again," I heard myself say, the conviction a sudden, solid thing inside me. "This house is mine. I won't let him drive me from it." Davies nodded, a flicker of approval in his eyes. "Good. Anchor yourself here. But remember, Strength doesn't mean isolation. Use the help offered. Remain watchful, yes, but don't let vigilance curdle into constant fear. As the sun climbed, bathing the world in unequivocal light, a nascent warmth spread through my chest. Not hope, perhaps, not yet, but resolve. A fierce, quiet determination to reclaim the pieces of my life, my safety, my stolen peace. Julian had breached these walls once. The threat lingered, but something within me had shifted. I had met violence with strength, terror with defiance. I had survived, and I would continue to survive, continue to fight, for every breath, every sunrise, every quiet moment in this space I claimed as my own. This life was mine, irrevocably. A magnesium flare from my lens bleached the cavernous heart of the Vulcan Forge, each pulse a stark pronouncement of solitude in this cathedral of rust, or so conviction held. As the light subsided, perception shifted, a tremor in the periphery, a density coagulating where only empty air belonged. In that skipped heartbeat, my hunt for derelict beauty twisted into something primal, a breathless pursuit where I was suddenly the quarry. Weeks, the Vulcan Forge had haunted my periphery, a skeletal silhouette clawing at the bruised twilight edge of the city. Its shattered eyes and decaying brick skin whispered promises of forgotten narratives, an irresistible siren song for lens and spirit alike. Breaching its perimeter felt almost illicitly simple, a yielded seam in the corroded mesh, a scramble over skeletal debris, and the threshold was crossed. The air hung thick, a tapestry woven from mildew, cold iron, and the phantom sweat of generations. A profound stillness settled, the weight of untold histories pressing in. I navigated the echoing immensity, my boots crunching softly on grit and fallen plaster. Sunbeams, thick as honey, slanted through rents in the roof, igniting nebulae of dust motes in the gloom, transforming industrial wreckage into transient altarpieces. Absorption took hold. Each click of the shutter felt like capturing a fleeting ghost, framing the poignant elegance of entropy. Time dissolved, measured only by the shifting geometry of light and shadow. Framing a derelict console, its gauges eternally stalled, I registered it, a susurrus against the silence, the furtive drag of weight hesitant to announce itself. Ice traced my spine. My finger froze above the trigger. Only the frantic timpani of my own heart and the thin rasp of my breath filled the void. Then, again, closer. Deliberately, I lowered the camera, pivoting into the chiaroscuro depths of the main floor. Every shadow seemed deeper, pregnant with possibility. Is someone here? The question fractured the stillness, my voice an alien tremor. The ensuing silence hummed, taut with unspoken presence. A step back, a clumsy collision with the console, its protesting shriek ripped through the quiet. And then, movement. A silhouette detaching itself from one darkness, only to melt into another between hulking, rust-wept machines. Not imagination, not light playing tricks. Company. A cold dread seeped into my veins, laced with a dangerous thread of curiosity. Another soul drawn to the ruin? Then why the stealth? I mean no harm, I offered, striving for a calm I didn't feel. My name Ilara, suddenly feeling fragile. Just capturing images. If this space is claimed, I'll go. A guttural chuckle scraped the air, seemingly sourceless yet intimately near. Go? The voice, like stones grinding together, belonged to the unseen figure, Silas. "Oh, the amusement hasn't peaked yet, little shutterbug." My marrow chilled. The tone wasn't just threatening, it was playful, a predator savoring the chase. Escape, now. I pivoted, but a shape materialized from behind a girder, eclipsing the path. Tall, swathed in shadow beneath a grimy hood, clutching a length of oxidized pipe like a scepter of menace. Grin. "Leaving so soon?" he purred, the solicitude utterly false. Retreating, my thoughts scattered like startled birds. Another exit? There had to be one. I recalled a passage nearby. "What is it you're after?" The question was a flimsy shield, buying milliseconds as I edged toward that remembered doorway. "My equipment's valuable. Take it." Silas's disembodied laugh echoed, closer now. "Trinkets hold no interest, pretty bird. We prefer games." No more words. I broke, a desperate surge propelling me through the doorway and into the connecting passage. Behind, erupted shouts, the heavy rhythm of pursuit. The corridor stretched, a tunnel lined with impassive sealed doors. My lungs were furnaces. Panic constricted my throat. I'd ventured too far into the forge's labyrinthine gut, losing the thread back to the world. A sharp turn deposited me into a vast repository. Racks soared towards the obscured ceiling, crammed with forgotten inventory, forming a disorienting metal forest. Without thought, I plunged into the aisles, hoping the complexity might swallow me whole. I moved like a wraith between the towering structures, breath held tight. Their voices reverberated from the entrance, amplified by the cavernous space. Little bird, where did you fly?" Silas called, a sing-song cadence that prickled my skin. Hunkering behind a collapsed section of shelving, I fought to quiet the frantic bellows of my lungs. The camera bag, slung across my body, felt like an anchor, yet unthinkable to discard. It held my lifeline, the phone. As my fingers scrabbled for the device, a vice-like grip seized my shoulder. A choked gasp escaped as I was wrenched upright, confronting one of my hunters. Grin. His breath was rancid, eyes alight with a terrifying, feral joy. "Peekaboo," he leered, his smile a ruin of decay. Primal instinct surged. My knee drove upward, connecting solidly. A strangled gasp, and Grin folded, clutching himself. I shoved hard. He staggered back, colliding with a towering rack, which groaned and then surrendered to gravity with a deafening metallic roar. No time to watch the aftermath. I fled, stealth abandoned, fueled by the enraged shouts erupting behind me. Bursting from the storage maze into another passage, stairs ascended to the left, deeper shadows beckoned right. Stairs. I took them, punishing my legs, hauling myself upward 2 steps at a time. Sheer terror overrode the burn. Reaching the landing, a beacon, a window, vacant of glass, framing the familiar geometry of the factory grounds, the perimeter fence, escape. A fierce tide of hope flooded me, lending impossible speed. I sprinted towards the opening, mind already charting the path to safety. But arrival shattered the illusion. 15 feet, perhaps more, separated me from the unforgiving concrete below. No soft landing awaited. The relentless drumming of boots ascending the stairwell sealed the choice. A broken bone seemed a mercy compared to their intentions. A ragged breath, a half-formed plea to any listening divinity, and I launched myself into the void. The ground met me with brutal force, stealing my breath, sending fractures of agony up my leg. I collapsed, ankle screaming betrayal. No time for inventory. Above, furious yells rained down. Teeth clenched against the fire in my joint, I staggered upright, forcing myself into a desperate, hobbling run towards the fence. Each step was a fresh wave of nausea, the ankle-threatening collapse. They were closing, their pounding footfalls terrifyingly near. The fence shimmered, a mirage just beyond reach. Mere feet away, a hand seized the back of my jacket, arresting my flight. I was hauled backward, hitting the ground with a sickening thud that expelled all air. Stars prickled my vision. A face swam into focus above me, contorted in a vicious grin. Silas. "Running out of tricks, little bird," he mocked. "Foolish, the game just got serious." As Silas reached for me, a different sound sliced through the tense air. A wail, distant but growing rapidly louder. Sirens, official, unmistakable. His head snapped up, the cruel amusement draining from his face, replaced by sudden pallor. A low curse escaped his lips. His gaze flickered down at me, a brief, venomous calculation, then back towards the approaching sound. With a final, frustrated snarl, he wheeled and vanished back into the shadowed maw of the Vulcan forge, Grin presumably following. I remained sprawled on the hard ground, breath hitching, scarcely processing the reprieve. The sirens crescendoed, bathing the scene in strobing red and blue. A cruiser skidded to a halt near the fence, an ambulance close behind. "Here!" My voice emerged a ragged croak. "Help me, please!" The subsequent hours dissolved into a montage. Gentle hands probing my swollen ankle, the dispassionate questions of officers, the sterile pop of forensic flashes documenting the scene. Only later, adrift in the antiseptic quiet of a hospital room awaiting the verdict of X-rays, did the pieces assemble. A routine patrol, spotting my incongruously parked vehicle near the condemned structure, had decided on a cursory check. Their arrival was sheer, dumb luck. Silas and Grin had melted back into the city's underbelly, the police assured me. But the investigation was active. Mine wasn't the first such encounter in the city's forgotten corners. I had been fortunate. Yet, even nursing the throbbing reminder of the chase, the conviction remained. These derelict spaces held echoes, narratives yearning for release, and I, Ilara, would remain their conduit. Hazard be damned.